Hey there. Are you ready to get existential? Are you ready to start thinking about your own individuality and mortality? How about the meaning of life? Well, I hope you are, because today I'm in the mood to talk about SOMA, a survival horror game of the walking simulator variety. Now, because this game is on the walking simulator side of things, this video is not going to be so much a review as it is a video talking about my experience with the game. I'm going to be focusing on talking about the characters, the themes, and the story. So if you're looking for a simple review that's going to help you figure out whether you want to play this game in the first place or not, consider this mission accomplished already. I'm talking 2 thumbs up. If I could give you 2 thumbs up right now, I need to get a microphone stand. Now, for the rest of you who enjoy watching people talk about video games that you haven't played, and for those of you who have already played this game and are looking for somebody to talk about the stories and themes in a little bit more in depth, hi. Welcome to the Nothing Sacred channel. My name's Adam, and it's time to get existential. The game opens up with Simon Jarrett dreaming of the time he was in a car crash with his girlfriend Ashley. Although surviving, Simon experienced permanent brain damage that causes it to sometimes bleed. He has increased difficulty remembering things, bright lights and TV can be painful for him to watch, and his lifespan has likely been drastically reduced. His girlfriend, on the other hand, suffocated on her own blood, pulling in her lungs from the injury she sustained, dying before the ambulance ever reached them. Yeah, so this one gets kinda heavy. And to be honest with you, it only gets heavier from here. Simon is woken up by a call from David Munshi, a PhD student of York University in Toronto, reminding him of his appointment for the day. Munshi and his colleague Paul Berg are running a project to attempt to figure out how to heal damaged brains. They claim that the human brain can heal itself if done in the right way. Instead of using static brain scans, they intend to use a Nakajima neurograph after someone drinks tracer fluid. Doing this, they can see where the damage in the brain is and then come up with activities that help to heal the brain. How this actually works isn't elaborated on so much in the game. I don't think I understand how liquid you consume would help show the activity of the brain as opposed to the intestines, and I'm also not sure how increasing the activity of the brain would heal it if it's bleeding. I would think if anything, rest would be required. It's inside the apartment you really figure out how the game is played. Basically, it focuses on moving objects manually you might expect to move automatically with the touch of a button, such as sliding your mouse in the direction you want to open a door. This feels quite natural, but there is one unfortunate aspect I need to complain about. Throughout the game you can run, but you have to hold down the shift key to do so. This really cramped my pinky finger. In some games you can tap the shift key once and then you run until you stop moving, and then there are games like Doom that have an automatic run feature, but here you simply have to hold the key down for as long as you want to run. It made my hand feel so uncomfortable that I swapped between the controller and keyboard and mouse multiple times, which sucks because the game feels much smoother with a mouse and keyboard. Who knows though, it may be a me problem. I've got pretty short stubby hands. My god, maybe it is true what they say. Maybe size really does matter. On the way to his appointment, Simon receives a call from his friend who works at the same store as him. He lets him know he's got him covered, and also that someone just started covering the comic section of the store, the position Ashley used to work. Simon makes peace with it, saying it wouldn't do her any good to hold that position open. Simon meets up with Munshi at the office and they get the brain scan going. Suddenly, all goes dark. The lights are off and Munshi is gone. Scrambling to the wall, Simon turns the lights on, and it becomes clear we're not in the same place we were before. Replacing the office space is what seems like some kind of bunker, full of diving suits and metal contraptions. The door is locked and secure, but we can break the window to get out. As I begin exploring, I come across robots, one of which, when I click on it, seems to activate what I can only describe as being a psychic experience. We hear a woman's voice asking someone if they talk like the others and if they want structure gel. There's no response, and she says she'll shut them down. As I continue exploring, I find something called an Omni tool that seems to fit perfectly into the computer next to where Simon woke up. The computer releases a toolbox with chips that says upgrade the Omni tool. Using this, I open up the door leading out I couldn't get through before. It leads into an underwater tunnel, inside of which has a box saying data buffer available. Simon makes another psychic connection, hearing 2 people talk about going to Theta because Upsilon is swarming with crazy robots. So there's a lot going on in a short amount of time here. A whole heck of a lot of questions to be getting asked. First of all, it's clear that Simon isn't in the same office that he took his brain scan at. So what happened to him and how did he end up here? Is it possible that he fainted and went into a coma and finally woke up in this place? Or is it possible that his condition is affecting his memory and we're going through some type of amnesia deal here? It's strange because he wakes up in the same type of chair that takes brain scans. But if he's really suffering from short-term memory loss, then you think we would see other people here right now, the people that are running the test on him. But this place seems to be devoid of human activity so far. Also, what is this place? It seems to be very futuristic. Like, it seems to be full of actual robots, although everything seems to be offline. And then also everything operates in a futuristic way, like, you open doors with a touch of a finger or the swipe of an Omni tool as opposed to just, opening it with a door handle. And finally, there seem to be crazy robots, which is probably not good. Simon comes across something that looks both biological and mechanical at the same time. He has an ET moment with it. It physically pains me that the majority of you probably don't get that reference. And discovers that after touching it, he no longer feels any pain in his head. He then enters into another room where the power is shut off and a robot has attached itself to two ET moment makers using umbilical cord looking cables. Strangely, the robot sounds like it's breathing, like a human. I detach one of the umbilical cords and the robot says, "No, don't," in a desperate tone. I spent some time seeing if I can find any other solution at all, but it seems like the robot is diverting power I need to use to keep moving. Feeling a little guilty for doing so, I hesitantly detach the other umbilical cord. The robot asks me why, saying it was happy as it shuts down. As the power turns on, a voice is heard from the computer. She begins asking us where we are, but the computer short circuits a little bit. She says we're probably in the thermoplane somewhere and should go to the comm center for a better connection. Now this is where the game really starts to feel a little bit more like a game. It does for the most part resemble a walking simulator, however, there is one horror survival aspect to the game. While looking for the comm center, Simon encounters another robot, except this one doesn't talk to him. It tries to pursue him, but it's easy to avoid. Clearly the tutorial monster of the game. I'm getting a little ahead of myself with where we're at in the story by saying this, but this is my least favorite part of the game. There are monsters throughout that try to make contact with Simon. The closer they get, the more Simon experiences some kind of glitchy static effect, and if they touch him, he gets hurt and limps. The ET moment makers heal you, but if you get touched a second time before healing, it's game over. You die. At first I enjoyed this mechanic. It added suspense up to a point, but very quickly it became an annoying distraction from what I really cared about. I would be interested in seeking out lore and going it slow to really absorb my environment, but I wouldn't be able to do that whenever a monster is around because I have to hide and run away. Then it also suffers from the same issue Outlast did. The first time I encountered a monster, maybe even the second time after it kills me, I feel very tense and scared. But after that, I just start playing an annoying game of memorization and trial and error, which is no fun at all. There's one monster that gave me trouble in particular because I ended up getting lost when the lights turned off and I was never able to get my bearings because of how unrelenting the monster was. I like the idea of what the game is trying to do with the enemies, but I feel like ultimately it detracts from what really makes the game special. Simon enters a room with a robot that speaks cohesively but thinks it's a human. Literally, when Simon asks the robot if it's human, it says that clearly it is. The robot claims to be a human named Carl Semken, a wrangler. Simon tries to convince him that he's a robot body, but Carl thinks that's ridiculous. He says he's injured and needs to get some help. Unable to communicate further, I turn around to see a power lever. Oh shit! Fuck! Turned it off! I immediately put the lever back. Carl appears to be alive, or functional, but not doing great. As I do more exploring, I come across a paper talking about black boxes, an implant that monitors a personal overall condition and sends the information back to the warden unit called WOW, W-A-U. There was actually something about black boxes on the computer next to where Simon woke up, although we couldn't do anything with it. I also come across a dead body with Carl Semken's name and face on it. I find and use another ET moment maker, causing more power to shut off and another monster to seek me out. This also causes Carl to go silent. I divert some power from one source to another to open a door, bringing me up to the comm room. Inside is a computer with audio logs which have the time of recording dated. Okay, so we've come across a robot that thinks it's a dead man, and the beginning of this game takes place in 2015, but the audio logs show was being recorded in 2103. I'm not entirely sure what's happening yet, but I'm starting to think that we're playing as a robot that thinks it's a human. Now, to be fair, we are able to see that we have human arms, but the robot that thought it was Carl also thought that it could see its own human limbs. So, well, we'll see. Inside the comm center, Simon is able to connect with Site Lambda. The woman he has been speaking to earlier calls herself Catherine. She calls the place we're in Pathos 2 and is surprised we weren't aware of that. She assumed we must have worked here, but obviously there's no way Simon would have even lived long enough to do so. He confesses that he thinks he killed Carl, and in a somewhat dismissive way, Catherine says,
well, robots don't feel anything, so yeah.
A large crash occurs and the place starts caving in. Catherine tells Simon to come to Lambda using a shuttle train. The ocean crashes in on the domed building, and Simon finds that he can breathe underwater and his arms now no longer look human. Okay, yeah, so I'm feeling pretty confident that we're playing as a robot. Which raises some questions. Like, okay, so this happened to Simon in relation to a brain scan, right? So does that mean that his consciousness transferred from his human body to the body of a robot? And if so, And if so, is that also what happened to the other robots? Also, why are there varying degrees of cognizance and self-awareness? Out of anybody, you would think it would be the workers who would understand why and how they got turned into robots and have the self-awareness that happened in the first place. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. And finally, how did Simon, a regular guy, get sucked up into all of this? And last but not least, you see this guy over here? You see this little guy? His name's Twix. Isn't he a special little guy? Okay, I don't know. He was over here. This could be a blooper. I'm just going to include it in the video. Let's move on. We're now introduced to the next part of the game that genuinely makes it horror to me. In addition to the tension of the monsters and the existentiality of the situation, we've also got the fear of the abyss. Walking through the ocean makes me feel very uncomfortable. To be honest, I used to have nightmares as a kid that looked a lot like this, low visibility and all. Simon comes across another data buffer where we hear a woman named Amy talking about how machines killed Carl. So, machines killed Carl, yet one of them thinks it is Carl. The guy speaking to her says she needs to get back to Theta, which seems to be the running theme with all the data buffers and recordings we come across so far. Everyone was trying to get to Theta to escape man-killing machines. Immediately after, we come across another human-sounding machine that says it needs more structure gel and attacks if we get too close. Upon entering into the outskirts of another site, we find oh, it's a little cat butt! Oh, it's a little cat butt! It's a little cat robot! Oh, this situation just got better. I mean, we had the human robots, now we got the cat robots. You can't beat that. Because cats make the world go around, pretty much, is what I'm saying. The door is stuck at Upsilon, but Catbot sears it open. Inside we come across a genuine living person, Amy. She's connected to this strange machine around her as well as iron lungs. She says it won't let her die. Nothing is allowed to die. Just like with the first talking robot, keeping her alive is diverting power that's needed for us to progress. I hesitate at first, but then I pull both plugs, instantly killing her. Okay, so this is it. This is SOMA. This is what the game is all about. A continuous thought experiment in video game form. I just killed a person, partially for the sake of progression, but it was also more than that. Because really, if I had looked long enough, maybe I would have been able to find a way to get ahead without having to kill her. But I chose to end her anyway. Why did I do that? Here's how I look at it. This woman has been existing in this condition for who knows how long. That's her entire existence, just staring at a wall without any human contact, in pain. And suppose I am going to be able to get help from Catherine down the line. Are we actually going to be able to separate her from what she's connected to? And furthermore, let's say I get so far down the line, and then I'm unable to turn back to help her. What happens then? She's just stuck in this condition for an eternity? But this is hard because we deal with this kind of thing in real life all the time. I mean, minus the talking robot dystopian future. We look at people who are bedridden in the hospital, potentially in pain for the rest of their lives, or people who are in a coma. Some people may say that that's not a life worth living, but who are we to say what is or isn't the quality of life worth living for somebody else? It makes me think of the first talking robot we came across, holding on for dear life. To me, thinking that you're a human when actually you're a robot that barely has any ability to maneuver or interact with the world around you is an existence that's not worth experiencing. But when I killed it, the last words it said were, is it possible that it experienced happiness in a way that I can't imagine because of the existence that I'm used to experiencing? To give a real world example, I often think about what adult Stephen Hawking's life must have been like. Yes, he was a highly intelligent man, but I feel that he must have experienced so little in comparison to most other able-bodied individuals. Yes, he could speak through a device, and technically he could make love, and that's great. But could he go for a walk? Could he go for a hike? Could he go swimming or bowling? As an adult, in his condition, Stephen Hawking never would have been able to be fully independent. He never would have gotten to experience what I consider to be true freedom. Thinking of the life that Dawkins must have lived often puts me into a depression. It makes me feel grateful that I live a stupid yet free life instead of an intelligent yet imprisoned life. I've often thought that I would kill myself if I had ever been so unlucky as to be Dawkins. But, you know, who am I to judge that? Although I can't possibly imagine being happy in the situation that he was in, he might have been. And then there's my greatest fear, to be mentally challenged, to have a severe learning disability. In some rare cases, something like a stroke might happen that damages the brain, causing a mentally healthy individual to experience cognitive impairment. It's always been important to me that if something like that ever did happen to me, if I had any self-awareness about it at all, that I'd take myself out. But at the same time, there are plenty of mentally challenged people out there that seem quite happy. Easy example, take your local neighborhood Down syndrome man. 9 out of 10 times, he's probably really happy. So, yeah. I don't know, man. It's crazy stuff to think about. We're just getting started with this game. With the power restored, Simon boards the shuttle, departing for Lambda. As we ride, an information video begins playing explaining just what this place is. Pathos 2 started as a thermal mining operation in the 60s, hence the being underwater thing, but is now home to Omega Space Gun, something that shoots satellites into space. The site as a whole is dedicated to produce, assemble, and launch spacecraft. Unfortunately, there's a little blockage in the tunnel, causing the shuttle to crash. Simon gets out and receives a call from Catherine at another data buffer. She says the tunnel has sealed itself to prevent collapse and he's going to have to walk. Once we arrive there, we see another monster approaching Catherine. As I get closer, it gets the drop on me. Simon momentarily blacks out, but then comes to with the monster gone. With the monster gone, we finally get to meet Catherine in person, who, as it turns out, is not a person. Admittedly, this had caught me by surprise. I'm not sure why I had been assuming that Catherine was going to be a human. I guess I thought she was going to be like Amy and had somehow survived on her own. Simon voices his disappointment that Catherine is a robot, and she points out that he's just a walking, talking, diving suit himself. Cue micro existential crisis. Catherine asks Simon to insert her Cortex chip into the Omni tool. He does so, transplanting her into the Omni tool from her broken robot body. Catherine then explains what's going on here. It's time to finally get some answers. She says that she saved all the people in the station as brain scans, putting them into an artificial world. Oh, you mean like the Matrix? To save them from the ending of the real world. A comet had struck the surface of the Earth and had about as positive an impact on people as it did for the dinosaurs oh so long ago. The idea is to launch this little computer called ARC, which will preserve itself as long as possible using solar power. Brain scans are essentially a copy, not a transfer, of a person up to the point the scan was taken. What this means is that it's feasible a scan could come online and exist at the same time the human the scan was taken from is still alive. As for the talking robots, they're the consequence of WoW. WoW is the AI system that was used to maintain Pathos 2. It had the ability to make brain scans from the black boxes referenced earlier in the game, and its prerogative is to sustain life. Once the comet destroyed life on the surface of the Earth, the WoW did everything it could to preserve what it considered to be life. So, it created brain scans of humans and stuffed them in robot bodies. It does everything it can to keep things alive like Amy, and then it also seems to have created life that comes across as hostile, the monsters. Quality of life is not a concern to the WoW, only continued existence is. Simon discovers a tracker for the ARC. Turns out it's at Site Tau. Catherine stresses how important it is for ARC to launch into space. It can only survive a couple decades at most down here. Simon asks if it would be possible for them to get on ARC themselves if they reach it, and Catherine says it's possible. So the journey continues. They find a sunken vessel outside, but it doesn't work. Simon starts exploring an infrastructure which happens to have a monster inside of it. There's another vessel station there, but the safety locks are on and have to be overridden. I find ET moment makers with umbilical cords attached. I detach them, causing the monsters to go ballistic on me. I rush back to the vessel and we get the heck out of there. It's at this point that Catherine explains about the WoW, saying it's not really a conscious person or a personality, it's more like a cancer. The WoW is the flip side of what we were talking about earlier, isn't it? It doesn't take into consideration quality of life, it only seeks out to preserve existence at all costs. Catherine called it a cancer, and cancer is universally understood to be a bad thing. But what is cancer? Cancer is when the cells in your body multiply and divide without dying themselves, eventually crowding out the healthy cells in your body. This is something that I've thought about a lot. The importance of death. Without death, there is no life. If you take a single body and the cells inside of it cease to die, eventually the body dies and the whole thing is over. The majority of my life I've struggled with the reality of my future death, as well as accepting the importance of death in the system of which we were born and grown from. A part of me understands the importance of death. Animals have to eat other animals. Organisms have to break down other organisms. Change is the foundation of continuation, and suffering is the foundation of change. Death being a part of suffering. This is the system which has been in place on the face of the earth for as long as we know about. A part of me understands this, but as an individual who grew up in a household that taught me that death is the consequence of sin, and sin is something which will someday be absolved, I can sympathize with a WoW. I grew up with a very utopian mindset. There's good and there's evil. Heaven is good. Heaven is paradise, and paradise is where change does not occur. The way things should be. And yet in this world there really is no such a thing as should be. Should be is an idea which exists inside of the human mind, unlike other things which exist outside of and independently of the human mind. A part of me sorrows that the system of Earth is what it is, but I also recognize that everlasting life is cancer, and cancer is evil. The shuttle crashes close by to the Delta site. The thing is sealed shut, but luckily Catbot saves the day. Outside we come across a dead body that Simon does his psychic connection with. He hears a woman warning Theta that Ackers is heading for them, saying he's gone crazy. In a building we find a computer where in a recording Ackers tells someone he changed his mind about not going to Theta. This is something to keep in mind for later. Simon is able to call in a Zeppelin at a cargo station. Unfortunately, Catherine says we'll need an update chip to use the Omni tool to take the Zeppelin. She says we're going to have to take one from a robot by force. course. There's a stun baton inside a toolbox there. This gives me two choices. There's a robot floating around nearby that thinks it's a human and seems relatively unstressed, and there's Catbot. It's a tough decision, but I choose to take out the human bot. After I do so, Catbot becomes afraid of me. Oh god. I think out of everything that's happened to me in this game, Catbot not trusting me is the hardest one to deal with. As he puts in the new chip, Simon reflects how difficult it was for him to do that. Catherine says it was just a robot, and Simon says they're just robots. Catherine says she understands that she gets attached to them too. She's not a monster, but in this case, it had to be done. Once arriving at the landing site of Theta, Simon comes across an unusually self-aware robot, a scan that doesn't seem to see anything and believes it's supposed to be on Arc right now. Simon assures it everything is alright, and I decide to pull the plug. I know it seems cruel, but I just keep thinking, what if it becomes fully self-aware at some point? The idea of being stuck in an immobile body without the ability to end itself? I decided to prevent that. Inside, Catherine says we gotta hijack a submarine that can take us all the way down to Delta. With how high the pressure is at that depth, it's the only way we can get there. The submarine in question has unfortunately been quarantined and needs a security cipher to unlock. Simon goes to see if there's anyone alive who can help. There was hope because Site Theta was considered the best for attempting survival, as a human anyway. There technically are humans, but they're not in speaking condition. It seems the WoW is somehow keeping them alive in a more organic fashion with increased mutation compared to what we've seen up to this point. Exploring the station, Simon discovers a memory scan of Brandon Wan, who knows the security cipher. Catherine has Simon upload him in a computer to try to get the information from him, but the simulation in the computer is blank, so Simon freaks out by perceiving himself as waking up in a pitch black room. Simon finds an environment chip, and Catherine impersonates a woman named Alice that Simon was romantically interested in to get the information out of him. This is a real mindfuck, because at this point you really have to question what the value of consciousness is here. It reminds me of the movie The Sixth Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger. In that movie, people can clone themselves, and there's a mishap with Arnold where the original and the clone are both alive at the same time, and there's another scene where two clones of the same guy are alive at the same time, and they end up talking to each other. It really causes you to question what's valuable and what's not. As humans, we tend to emphasize the value of experience. But what if somebody has memories of experiencing something they didn't actually experience? Do those memories then hold no value? Or is the value found in the memories, and then the value of experience is lost when the memories are lost? What if somebody experiences amnesia? Is the value of the life lived gone? It's at this point in the game that more is revealed about what happened to the people in Pathos 2. So first of all, structure gel is important. It's a little difficult for me to understand and therefore explain what structure gel is, so I'll just quote the game. It's a highly proteinated cross-link lubricant and a conductor and a signal medium with aligned graphene and a petroleum monosubstrate, polysaturated matrix containing fuel oils. Basically, structure gel was used in all the machinery, and somehow WoW was able to use it to transfer information as well as keep things alive. It can even sometimes reanimate dead things. Now apparently, structure gel is somewhat edible. When they ran out of real food, the residents of Pathos 2 resorted to consuming structure gel. Hackers seemed to become affected to the point of believing that WoW was communicating with him and that it had a plan. So when divers arrived to take him to Theta, he fatally wounded them, injecting them with structure gel. When he got to Theta, he did his best to try to infect everyone, with some escaping, fleeing for Omicron. Having successfully gotten the security cipher, the submarine is released. Alas, it's been stuffed with a brain scan by the WoW. It freaks out and falls into the water below. Without a submarine to use, Catherine says the only way to get down to the Ark is to use the climber at Omicron, which is essentially an elevator. The only problem is, there's still the issue of the density at the depth to deal with. Simon will have to find a power suit. Fingers crossed there's one available close to the climber. Still inside Theta, Catherine discovers an Ark simulator. She says maybe she can use it to see if it's possible to get them aboard the Ark. After a little research, she says that she thinks she can, in a similar way to how the brain scans were used to put them in the robot bodies. After another particularly annoying monster chase sequence, we take an elevator down to a floor below where another monster unavoidably catches us. Simon blacks out and has a dream he's still at home with Ashley by his bed. He wakes up to find that his lower body is encased in the same stuff the other sleeping humans are connected to. As you learn about Ackers in the game, you find out that he spoke of trying to put people to sleep for WoW. Somehow he knew that being connected to WoW in this way would cause a dreaming state. We get outside and travel to Omicron. Once there, Catherine and Simon make some chit-chat. Turns out all of the people at Pathos 2 had black boxes, and that's how Simon had been able to hear their past. He's not creating a psychic connection, he's data mining. We also find out a lot more about how the people of Pathos 2 were dealing with their situation. Everyone was pretty much having an existential crisis. People started forming this belief that if they killed themselves before their brain scan went online, they would essentially transfer their consciousness onto the Ark, as if they would shut their eyes in this life and open them in the next. This is another part of the lore that I can really appreciate, because it's obvious that they're wrong. A brain scan is a copy, and one dying before the other isn't going to magically change that fact. These people probably didn't truly believe what they said in their heart of hearts. It was was just a matter of desperation for hope. I feel like people do this in real life as well, and I can't blame anybody for it. I lost my belief system as a young adult because it was far too important to me to be entirely honest with myself. But in doing so, I was hit with an immediate dread and fear of my own impending death, as well as the potential death of all that is. I had done too much personal exploring to turn back to what I believed before, but I definitely went through a bargaining stage of my grieving process. First, I turned towards science. I thought maybe someday we'd be able to upload our minds to computers and be able to carry on forever from there. But deep down inside, I knew that that would never be the real me. It would just be a copy of me with my own memories. Then I turned towards ideas of reincarnation. I thought that maybe even if what I call me doesn't carry on, what is me at a deeper level will still be experiencing the next life even as I lose the memories of this life. I had to come to terms with the fact that I didn't actually have a reason to believe that, and that was hard. I had to come to terms with how I really felt. Part of what allowed me to do that was knowing how much longer I had to live after I came to terms with, a luxury that the people of Pathos 2 didn't really have. Sometimes blind faith is exactly what the doctor orders. Extreme problems call for extreme solutions. We finally find a viable power suit. Catherine says he'll need to copy himself into it, meaning there will be another copy of him. There will be two of him at the same time. Simon agrees to it, and we're left with a choice. The diving suit copy will inevitably be left behind, and since Catherine is going with the heavy suit copy of him, when it wakes up, the diving suit will be all alone. However, with the flip of a switch on the computer, he can be shut down, painlessly. I decided to do it. An eternity under the ocean alone is hell, and there's no fate worse than hell. With the body of the heavy suit, Simon and Catherine begin their descent in the crawler. Simon begins voicing his distress over creating another copy of himself. He says that it was like he flipped a coin and got lucky to be the one who woke up as the power suit. It's interesting how Catherine and Simon have been handling the situation up till now. So far, Catherine has been fully devoted and interested in fulfilling her mission, and Simon has been attempting to emotionally process what it is that he's going through. He takes every opportunity he can to try to comprehend what he's going through, whereas Catherine takes every chance she can not to. Despite this, Catherine is the one who seems to be able to face reality better than Simon. Even as he sometimes seems to be coming to terms with his experience, he will still interpret copying himself as the flip of a coin of which copy he will wake up as, when in fact it's quite clear that the diving suit copy will always be the diving suit copy. There was never any chance that that consciousness would suddenly wake up as the heavy suit copy. If you really pay attention to Catherine's dialogue while playing through, it's obvious that she has a clear understanding of this. She always interprets information the way she needs to be where she needs to be emotionally to fulfill her mission, but deep down has a grasp of what reality is. When she needs to shut down another robot, she decides, hey, it's just a robot, and robots don't have feelings. But when she needs to convince Simon, who is a robot, to help her, then it's, hey, we are Simon and Catherine, just as we were when we were human. She's full of contradictions, but that's what allows her to stay sane. Sometimes cognitive dissonance is required to maintain sanity and emotional stability. As we descend, a mysterious figure enters the crawler saying we did it, and that it will make preparations for us. It then disappears. Down in the abyss, we finally reach the place where the Ark is. Inside, we find the last woman on Earth, Sarah Lindwall. She has the Ark, but is too weak to even move, being kept alive artificially like everyone else here. She asks Simon to take it, and to please end her life. I do so, listening to her final words, her one last conversation on this god-forsaken planet. I place the Ark in a transport, and then begin making my own way to Site Phi to fire it off. On the way, I discover the Heart of WoW, and meet the mysterious figure again. It turns out, he's Johann Ross. He's been trying to kill the WoW since before everything else died or mutated by the effects of the WoW. The structure gel used at Omicron for the heavy suit Simon is in was modified by Johann to be toxic to the WoW. He says if we have one more ET Moment Maker moment with the heart, it will kill the WoW. This is it. The biggest decision in the whole game. I might be a hypocrite for everything I've said up to this point in the game, but I think I want to leave the WoW alive. All life as we know it on the surface of the earth is gone. I don't think that the WoW can do a good job of giving people that were already alive a satisfactory existence, but it seems to be reaching out. It's already caused mutation in the wildlife around it. Perhaps it can help basic, less intelligent life to survive until the conditions of the earth improve to allow the process of evolution to occur again. That will probably take tens to hundreds of thousands of years to happen, but if I don't kill it, I'm sure the WoW will be around long enough for that to happen. Despite all that the WoW has been and done, somehow it's become a glimmer of hope for me, for the world. I try to leave, but Johann tries to force me to kill the WoW, which backfires on him as a giant mutated fish blasts out of the ground, killing him. I finally make it to our final destination, where we find the original Catherine's dead body. Using data mining, we find out that the rest of the crew had killed Catherine. It turns out this is also why the Ark wasn't previously released in the first place. At a certain point, one of the crew members became nervous that the debris in space could wreck the Ark, even though the Ark could only survive a couple decades on Earth max and could potentially last thousands of years kilometers in space. Catherine tried to force her way into launching the Ark anyway and died when struck. After all this time, we finally placed the Ark inside the gun. Catherine sets it up so that the machine will scan their minds and load them up to the Ark when it launches. For a second, it looks like the upload won't happen quickly enough, but in the nick of time, it does. Left in the seat, Simon begins to freak out that they're still on Earth instead of the Ark. Catherine explaining to him that he should already know he himself wasn't going to be on the Ark. Through it all, Simon had held on to his coin toss delusion as a way of giving himself a reason to go on. But now, with that hope irreversibly swept away, he falls into despair. As they begin fighting with each other, a critical failure occurs. The power around Simon shuts off, including Catherine herself, leaving him alone in the abyss. Well, fuck. That's SOMA. A highly existential and very depressing game, at least for me. The ending is a very natural conclusion to the story, but that doesn't necessarily make me feel any better about it. As with all games ahead of their time, I think that SOMA is even more significant now than when it was first released. AI is evolving at a rapid rate. Elon Musk's Neuralink has officially implemented with the first individual to ever control a mouse with their mind, and the rise in awareness of transgenderism. Transgender is a topic I believe heavily relates to this game that I've been very hesitant to bring up because of how politically charged I think it is, combined with how little research I've done towards what studies show as opposed to political sound bites that do very little in the way of showing valid opinions or hypotheses. So, I don't want to voice a personal opinion, but I think that this game's exploration of body dysmorphia, where the mind interprets the body as something other than what is actually there, and the mind being greatly distressed when it's forced to observe the dissonance in itself, to be extremely significant. Because transgender deals with identity, which is what this game deals with. Is a human mind inside of a robot body a human? Is a woman mind inside of a man body a woman? The parallels are there, but I won't go in more detail in this video. I think I would like to create a separate video essay that dives into the themes of this game, doing more research on valid sources before I really formulate an opinion that I put out to the public. But anyway, back to the game itself. Looking back, I wish I would have left the other copy of Simon alive. I realize that he has a different personality from me, so it probably wouldn't have worked out this way in the story, but if it were me, I think I would have liked to have been able to go back to the other copy of myself for the sake of company. And then after that, if I'm being honest, I think I would have liked to have submitted myself to the WoW. You know, when it comes to the other brain scans and the other robots, life kind of sucks, but anything that seems to embed itself in that red spongy stuff enters into a long-term dream state. Realistically speaking, Simon probably could have lived the life he always wanted to live, even if it technically wouldn't have been real. Now, I realize there's arguments to be made about the value of real versus not real, but if I'm being honest with you, if I were in the Matrix, I would be on Cypher's side. I'm much more interested in the practicality of the experience itself than any hypothetical value behind it. I would rather taste a steak that's not real but tastes real than, I don't know, eat real dirt that tastes like dirt, I guess. But anyway, I hope you'll enjoy the video. If you did, then please check out the other videos on my channel, and if you like the general vibe of my channel, please subscribe, because newsflash, there's a lot more to come, and I want you all to be here to see it when it does. In the meantime, y'all have a good one. Bye.